Sure.
Thank you so much. Senator, what's
Sure.
your response to the president's tweet alleging that the protester was or sent to work with Antifa? Is that something that you support? Do you think that that's an appropriate move of the president at this moment?
I just saw the tweet, and I know nothing of the episode, so I don't know. I'm not as fixated, I guess, as some people. But so I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I just couldn't answer without watching the video and seeing the tweet myself. I mean, I just read the tweet, but I don't know the reference point.
Given the place that the country's in right now,
Sure.
should the president be careful about tweeting potential conspiracy theories?
I don't know whether the president should be careful or not about what he tweets. I don't think Donald Trump's going to change his behavior. I will say this: there are a lot of, I worry more about the country itself than I do about what President Trump tweets. My sense is this week that now that the riots have turned back more toward peaceful protests, that the psychology of people has improved, that we've, while we gravitate, I say we, as a country have gravitated to our corners, are sort of coming back to the middle of the ring in an opportunity, hopefully, to be seized now to have a discussion. There's been, as you know, legislation proposed on reforms. There's talk about reform happening. I think reform talk is smart. I think defunding police departments is ridiculous. And I think that we're seeing people, policymakers and others, opinion leaders coming more to a reasonable place to discuss.
Sort of ban on chokeholds.
Lead more on the issue of policing reform. Would he need to lead your party?
I don't know that he needs to lead our party or anybody else. Frankly, one of the concerns I'd have, and I think sort of gets to what you're asking about too, is I don't want to see a federalization of local policing, and I do think that there could be federal guidelines, federal standards. Clearly, we have resources, at a national level that could be helpful, perhaps at state and county and local levels. But policing is largely and should remain a local and state issue. So to the degree that the federal government could provide some guidance, I think this is the right place to have that discussion. But I'd be a little bit careful about federalizing law enforcement at every level.
What specific reform measures are you looking at?
So I haven't spent a lot of time on this particular topic until probably the last 48 hours on the reform side. I just think you have to have everything on the table. That's always been my position. I think people should never start a discussion with saying what they won't consider. So I'm happy to have the discussion with everything on the table. I do think there needs to be, I know there's increased discussion now about union reform. I think that is, a part of the issue. I think, again, to standards, your question was, should there be a federal law against chokeholds? Perhaps we can look at some things like that, again, using federal resources, realizing that there are certain things that are very dangerous, certain procedures that are very dangerous. Maybe there isn't a place for those, and that kind of guidance could become law, I suppose. I think, where there is obvious, for example, racial injustice, that is not just a localized issue. That is a national issue, and I think an appropriate discussion about that, whether it's sentencing guidelines, looking at possible solutions. But you have to bring everybody together. And I think that everybody has to include, obviously, prosecutors, law enforcement itself, advocates, obviously the legal profession, defense attorneys, the faith community, I think should play a major role. One of the things I was saying, I was pondering this today, actually watching a little bit of news in the office. One of the things that has been encouraging to me, even in the sort of the worst moments, has been to see a faith community rise up. And by that, I don't just mean like real conservative evangelicals or real liberal social justice. I mean everybody. And as sad as it sort of sounds, perhaps in some ways, I've really been heartened by watching some of the memorial services of some of the victims, and been encouraged by the spirit of faith and faith expression that I've heard from the pulpits and from family members. And so to me, I just think we've got to get sort of the riot part of it behind us, because I do think that has a tendency to rile up emotions, and get to the discussion part of it. And it can be everything from a kitchen table discussion to a national discussion, and now's the time.
Do you think that policing legislation could pass before the 4th of July recess? Do you think Republicans can move that quickly? in the Senate?
Well, the Senate, Republicans or Democrats, doesn't move quickly very often on anything, and there are big priorities. I'm not even sure legislation is the most critical part of this, to be honest with you. I think that the discussion itself has tremendous merit. I'm not saying we should stop there, don't get me wrong, but I think getting it right is really important, and I think a discussion's fine. But I just logistically don't know if that's even possible in terms of a 4th of July deadline. All right, thanks, everybody.
Hey,